Where do you see कि overall पाकिस्तान के अंदर अगर हम सही तरीके के साथ digital transformation करें तो how can this change Pakistan's future?
So adoption of technology leads to growth and trade then leads to prosperity, which looks at the long term. Nothing happens in 4 or 5 years. Although things might manifest themselves, opportunities, but opportunities, if you want to tap them, they need to be invested in with resources, with people, and the results are going to manifest in a bit of time. They take time.
But where do you see more potential in those sectors के अंदर?
In terms of productivity gains, productivity that can be leveraged. Look at our productivity numbers. So I think that's something that can be leveraged and taken advantage of by applying technology. Smart agriculture, we were able to support the policy ecosystem within which PSW was able to grow. But eventually, the decision is verified and validated by history. If you go about changing or working with the entire Goliath of a system, आप अगर बड़ी organization को change करना चाहते हैं, like FBR, so it's a monumental effort.
Why do you think these collaborations are important?
Either you can be a bystander, or you can look at things changing. You can see how that works for you. No technology has ever been free of its pitfalls. But the discussion can, of course, not be complete without the facilitation angle, because there is a compliance burden that every taxpayer faces in this country, which is intangible.
So thank you so much for taking the time out today. आपने काफ़ी diverse जगहों के ऊपर काम किया, from government to bureaucracy to now working with the international इदारों के साथ. So talk to me a little bit about your background. के अभी how did you sort of ended up here where you are working right now?
Thank you, Tala. We were having this discussion before the interview, and my answer is, I think, similar to what you were telling me. You can make a fancy story out of things happening in the past, and how you ended up where you have, but not planned really. So I think it was the civil service was the thing to do back in my time, which I did. I went to civil service. Then I thought, let's experience the private sector, which I did, tech companies mostly, and then I came to ADB. So it's been a very exciting journey. I've learned a lot, and as I say, all growth is not vertical. So it's been an experiential journey, and it's more so, I think, I've learned a great deal at ADB since I've been doing this business planning. More so, very exciting work on digital.
How did जो अभी आप काम कर रहे हैं, like all the experience you have, उसका भी आपको किस तरह फायदा हो? Because अब आपने ज़ाहिर सारी domains भी देख ली हैं, because now working with the government, bureaucracy को कैसे handle करना है, bureaucracy कैसे काम करती है. So how did this whole sort of ecosystem जिसमें आप रह के आए हैं, वो अभी वो वाला सारा काम आपको फायदा दे रहा है?
You can, as Jobs said, you can connect dots looking backwards, not forwards. But I think these days you can connect the dots forwards also because of the AI and data. So it wasn't really planned, but as to learning, because if you're trying to work with the public sector, trying to bring in a new sector, digital is a new sector, and developing it now, we started with this very modest $1.2 million grant, and now we have, we're looking at a business pipeline, projects for the country, which is right now maybe, $600-700 million of projects under consideration, which is very interesting. So I think you have to attribute this and give credit to your journey.
जैसे हम लोग पहले भी डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की बात कर रहे थे, और हमने देखा कि सरकार के अंदर तो बहुत ज़्यादा काम आई थिंक ओवर द लास्ट 1 or 2 years हो रहा है. Where do you see कि ओवरऑल पाकिस्तान के अंदर अगर हम सही तरीके के साथ डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन करें तो how can this change Pakistan's future?
If you look at history, growth and prosperity, were always, responsible for taking countries forward. But what enabled that was always a tipping point, which happened after some kind of a new technology were invented, or, it just got implemented at scale. So adoption of technology leads to growth, and trade then leads to prosperity. So if you look at the past 20 years, the history has been about growth in digital technologies, how data can enable faster decision making, efficient operations, creation of new business opportunities, new use cases, new products and services that can be commercialized at scale. And how, for example, different players in the ecosystem can interact with each other and with players in other ecosystems, which is what international trade is all about. So that leads to growth and prosperity. So with that context, digital is an opportunity where, AI is an opportunity, which is unfolding before our eyes. So this is something that's happening. So this is something that I think most people would agree that needs to be leveraged for bringing some growth into the system, taking our economy to 400 billion, 500 billion, even a trillion, which is what we are discussing, that by 35, there are plans that the economy could go to a trillion. So that what enables that is the question. So digital is an opportunity.
अभी कुछ दिन पहले मैंने टाउन हॉल एक किया आईटी मिनिस्टर शहजा के साथ, तो उन्होंने भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा चीज़ें बताई कि जो गवर्नमेंट लेवल के ऊपर स्पेशली डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन और एआई के ऊपर काम हो रहा है. और आपने तो ज़ाहिर है काफ़ी ज़्यादा काम एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक के अंदर भी किया और बहुत मैक्रो लेवल से मेरे ख्याल से आप लोग चीज़ें देख रहे हैं. और ज़ाहिर है आपने पहले सरकार में भी काम किया हुआ था. अब नाउ यू आर वर्किंग विद द कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर विद अ लॉट ऑफ लाइक different sectors essentially. Where do you see Pakistan is lacking in digital transformation? Because एक चीज़ और भी हमें बहुत ज़्यादा जो सुनने में आती है कि नहीं, पाकिस्तान की उम्र बहुत छोटी है और कौमों को बनने में बहुत सा टाइम लगता है and everything. But now after the AI, after digital जिस तरीके के साथ expand हो रहा है, अब तो ज़ाहिर है वो जो सालों और सदियों का काम है वो अब बहुत कम होता जा रहा है. So where do you see really Pakistan is lacking in digital transformation, और आपके ख्याल से हमें क्या करना चाहिए?
I think we are in a good place in the sense that there is a spectrum on which things need to happen. There are upstream things, and then you move along that spectrum. But a very important thing in that spectrum is implementation. So execution of a good plan is something that leads to people saying it's well done. It has to be done. Somebody has to get it done. किसी ने काम करना है, वहाँ पे ले जाके. So for that you need a long-term perspective. I'm a big believer in having this a very strongly laid out policy which looks at the long term. Nothing happens in 4 or 5 years. Nothing happens in a year. Although things might manifest themselves, opportunities, but opportunities, if you want to tap them, they need to be invested in with resources, with people, and the results are going to manifest in a bit of time. They take time. So as going back to your question, so leveraging opportunities by taking a long-term approach. And it's not something that hasn't been done. If you look at countries which have done it, it's also happening right before our eyes. UAE, for example, some of the neighborly countries, I mean, there's unke aap international indices pe score dekh lein. Vietnam is a great example. If you look at them, how they have been successful in creating value from trade and exports. And then, other European countries a bit far from, where we stand, but, look at Estonia, it's a small country. I was reading about it, and then, when they got free, their president used to say, what is our Nokia going to be? So, the question that we also need to ask ourselves, what is our Nokia going to be? Is it going to be agriculture? Which is a huge opportunity, by the way, or is it going to be exports of IT-enabled services, software?
But where do you see more potential in those sectors ke andar?
Always, number one, a huge advantage. We are among the top 10 in so many things. Milk production, for example, rice production. So wheat, I'm not sure whether we are in the top 10. I think maybe we are, but that's a huge opportunity. In terms of productivity gains, productivity that can be leveraged. Look at our productivity numbers. So I think that's something that can be leveraged and taken advantage of by applying technology. Smart agriculture, for example, how we can improve our irrigation techniques. So there is a arable land that's available, and then there is land that can be made arable. So you can have efficient, intensive agriculture apply. Look at Holland, for example. They're the number one agri exporters in the world. Look at the size of the country. So I think size does matter, as they say, but it's also technology. Technology is a huge enabler. And also, I think hats off to the Ministry of IT these days. They are taking leadership on some of these things that matter. National AI policy got approved recently, and before that, the Digital Nation Pakistan Act. So I think everything is there in the Act. So what we need to do is take it to the next level. And the Minister Shaza is doing a brilliant work in terms of raising some of these questions, engaging people in the ecosystem within the country, and also interacting with key stakeholders, for international collaborations. So I think it's a huge effort. But I think we've got the right leadership in place in the ministry.
आपने जैसे भी ट्रेड की बात की और PSW के साथ भी आप लोग बड़ा क्लोजली काम कर रहे हैं. एक तो नंबर 1 आपका पहला इंट्रोडक्शन PSW के साथ कब हुआ और why did you guys decided to work with PSW?
देखिए, थोड़ी सी फिर मुझे आप अलाउ करें कि मैं आपको थोड़ी सी हिस्ट्री इस पे बताऊं. Pakistan Single Window is obviously is an organization within the Federal Board of Revenue. It's an independent organization, but it was conceived within FBR. So because hats off to the team who worked initially on the project, Imran and Aftab later, and the team, I think, done a brilliant job. But initially when they started on the concept, it was very new. And doing something new within the government is not easy. So it doesn't mean if you have a good idea, everybody will latch onto it. So at that point, what we were able to support the PSW with design of it, and again full marks to the team led by Imran at the time. So they brought it to out of the design phase and into the open where it was ready for financing. So we've been supporting that project, not heavily in that sense that we did not finance it directly, but we were able to support the policy ecosystem within which PSW was able to grow. But taking nothing away from the team that is doing a fabulous job in terms of how they've been able to line up different government departments behind that single window. The kind of regulatory support that has been extended to the traders. The kind of processes they've been able to put in place. The kind of international collaborations. Just to mention, I think that they have been able to live engage and live interact with the Chinese single window. So in itself, it's a huge accomplishment. Also, they're working on, I think, a couple of other countries, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. So I wish them very well on that. So the more you have, signed on to the grid, the more functional the system becomes. That is how the data works, because you have more of it. And then it is a self-perpetuating, propitious cycle, which enables you to take good decisions in future also.
And what is the role of AI in all of this? Because digitization की हम बात कर रहे हैं और उसको ज़रा speed up करने के लिए चीज़ें, because it's such a big ecosystem, numbers and data and everything. So where do you see the role of AI? और उससे भी और कौन से next steps हैं जो मतलब बहुत जल्दी achieve हो सकते हैं?
See, AI is something which is unfolding as an ongoing discussion. How do you develop this? How do you regulate this? We just had a national AI policy. So I think there is a discussion that needs to take place on that policy. How do we take it to, for example, delivering services to citizens and also taking it to other sectors? I agree, we mentioned a few minutes ago. How do we, for example, have smart city interventions in terms of, for example, traffic tends to be a big issue. How do we use artificial intelligence? So Beijing used to be very bad in terms of traffic. People always used to complain, but now people say that people are very disciplined there because you have these cameras and AI-driven management. So that's the next level of development. So the policy enables everything, but after the policy, you have to have these operational regulatory instruments which actually nudge the market, nudge the people in one direction, stop people doing a few things, encourage some new things. So that's how you modify or encourage behavior in the society, which leads to use of AIs, because everybody is so focused on what they want to achieve. So, for example, an AI discussion is also about, creating public value. So public value can be created once you take into operational areas, public service delivery, for example. So public value can only be created by public sector, because private sector organizations will always be focused on shareholder value and private value creation, regardless of what they're doing. CSRs are very small interventions. So you have to, data and AI will enable creation of public value, to answer your question. So data center developments, sharing of data, interoperability, data governance mechanisms, how we share data with other organizations, how we leverage it, I think is going to be huge in terms of creating public value. Data is something that people feel very strongly about. That I should have my server right under this table. It's not going anywhere. So unless you tell people and educate people that your data in the cloud, and a server, for example, which is hosted at PSW, is also under your good control, and it's not going anywhere. Nobody's taking it because it's a tier 3, tier 4, for example, high class server. So you can trust your data with it, which brings us to the next very important, it's a topic as well as it's an idea, that you have to have trust in the system. So unless you have trust in the system, people will not be willing to give up their asset. Data is seen as asset to the public good. If you don't believe or trust that I will give you my data fully and completely to the common system, you will not be able to do it. So there has to be a level of trust in the system, protection of data. It should be safe and secure from malicious attacks and so on. So I think trust is a huge factor in the system. Once you have it, and that also has to be denominated by the public sector. So public sector can enable that trust in that cloud data structure.
मेरी आफ्ताब साहब से भी कुछ अर्सा पहले पॉडकास्ट पे बात हुई, और उनकी पॉडकास्ट के बाद भी, और जनरली लोगों के जहनों में एक चीज़ बहुत ज़्यादा देखने में आती है कि पाकिस्तान में ऑलरेडी इतने ज़्यादा डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं. सो व्हाई देयर इज़ अ नीड ऑफ अनदर डिपार्टमेंट like PSW, and as a partner organization, how do you see this?
That's a great question, Tala. I think amazing. That's an eternal debate. कि आप क्या करेंगे? आप नया डिपार्टमेंट बना लें, पुराने को ठीक करें, नए लोग ले आएं, पुराने में, नए में नए लोग ले आएं, या नए में पुराने लोग ले आएं. So that's always that's a very, very important but ever-present discussion. It's a challenge also. What do you do? आप क्या करेंगे? और ये जो प्रेशर ऑफ द डिसीजन होता है ना, ये इज ऑन पीपल लाइक इमरान एट द टाइम, एंड देन पीपल वुड ऑलवेज आस्क यू, भाई आप क्यों बना रहे हैं, तो आप पुराने को ठीक कर लें. सो अब वो बजाय कि आप क्या करें कि आप उसमें इस बहस में पढ़ें. आई थिंक इम्पॉर्टेंटली इट इज़ टू हैव सम काइंड ऑफ एन एविडेंस इन द डिसीजन दैट यू आर टेकिंग, एंड देन you can only decide based on the evidence that you have at the time. So you can satisfy yourself कि जी मैंने ये चीज़ें देख ली हैं और this is the decision I'm taking. But eventually the decision is verified and validated by history. कि अब आप 4 साल गुजर गए, आपने कोई चीज़ implement की, तो then people will judge you whether it can go either ways. You can find examples. So new departments, there is an approach. It's an example of chartered development. Romer की theory on chartered cities, where you have a confined space in which you implement a new set of regulations. So it's a space, it's a protected space, more like a sandbox. It's not a sandbox, it's a bigger sandbox. For example, if you were to do it in a city like Gwadar or Karachi or Islamabad, just a set of regulations within a certain geographic space in terms of businesses that can be opened, how they will operate, how they will be regulated. So they may or may not complain about excessive regulation, how you can enable business within that space. So if you go about, just to go back to your question, if you go about changing or working with the entire, Goliath of a system, हाँ, तो आप अगर बड़ी organization को change करना चाहते हैं, like FBR, so it's a monumental effort. So you could create a space within that organization and try and test the concept. If you see it is going somewhere, then you have data, then you have evidence, and then maybe people might, look at the example and try to do things differently in other places also within that organization. Let me also give you another example. What the current chairman FBR, Rashid, has done. And people might agree or disagree with it. He's taken a different approach, because if you're trying to change an organization, you have to take a disruptive approach. And when it comes to government departments, it's a calculated risk, what you want to disrupt and what you want to continue. So he's done a few good things, including, for example, a performance appraisal, performance management system, in which there is it's a digital initiative, but it takes peer review in a very taking a systems approach. So that has given some good results as to pilot, and I think even the system is being considered for adoption, or at least piloting within the broader setup of the government. The establishment division is considering to try that system, how it works.
अभी जैसे हम लोग पाकिस्तान में डिजिटल ट्रेड सिस्टम्स कर रहे हैं, डिजिटाइजेशन ओवरऑल भी हो रही है, आप लोग एज अ बैंक ज़ाहिर है काफ़ी जगहों के ऊपर काम कर रहे हैं. सो व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस फ्रॉम स्पेशली फ्रॉम द एशिया, बिकॉज वी कैन रिलेट प्रॉब्ली मोर देन द यूरोप एंड द US, which Pakistan can take and implement?
Well, generally, as I said, it's about having a well-considered, evidence-based approach, which you can achieve through a proper inquiry or investigation into the running a diagnostics, for example, into the system. So once you have that data, then you have a different examples. But every country is very different. So there is you could not just bring Estonia's X road, for example, and implement in Pakistan. But there are learnings from Estonia, there are learnings from Denmark, there are learnings from Vietnam, there are learnings from Korea. Korea, for example, has a fund of funds. There is a lot of discussion going on funds. So that's one example which we can leverage. UAE, closer to home, I think they've done well. Also, they have a Ministry of Artificial Intelligence, as we know. So that's so you learn from everyone basically, but you have to be open to learning, and that comes once you have understood the system, which I think we've done a good job on running this diagnostics. So after that, you sit down and try to scope it out, try to design something which works for the local context, takes into account the local context, takes into account what the stakeholders are saying, like everyone, some people in this room also. And then you design something that you are happily and can satisfy yourself that have taken everything into account, and this is what we have designed, and this is how I think everyone should work.
अभी हम लोगों ने देखा कि कुछ पायलट प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं वो सेंट्रल एशिया के साथ और चाइना के साथ भी डेटा शेयरिंग के हवाले से हम लोग कर रहे हैं. Why do you think these collaborations are important? Because again, एक आम बिजनेसमैन या आम बंदा प्रॉब्ली ये भी है कि यार ये तो डेटा पहले हमें पता चलता है कि शायद नादरा का डेटा भी डार्क वेब पे पड़ा हुआ है, यहाँ पड़ा हुआ है, तो अब ये भी अगर हम करेंगे तो इज इट सेफ, इज इट नॉट सेफ, हाउ कैन दे यूज, अगर उसको हम फायदे के लिए कर रहे हैं तो व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द बेनिफिट्स?
देखिए, एक ऑब्वियस फायदा तो यूजर को है ना, बात तो वहाँ से शुरू होनी चाहिए कि यूजर एक्सपीरियंस क्या है. As I say, technology only moves in one direction. So that is what the direction is for technology. And either you can be a bystander, or you can look at things changing, or you can see how that works for you. And no technology has ever been free of its pitfalls. I know that's it's true for every technology. But this technology tends to be a bit more democratic, because it's not like nuclear technology, for example. It's all mystery, but this is like very democratic. You could deploy an AI chatbot, for example, if you wanted to within a few weeks. So I think that's one. You have to see how the system supports you, the new one. If you are able to, if it gives you time and resource advantage, I think everybody would like to use that. If my user experience is good, I will. And then, every deployment, every design has to rely on user experience. That's where you start. And then going to your question on data, everybody has the data. Even if you're filing a paper-based document, you're giving up data. It's only a form. If it is a question, whether it is on paper, is it a PDF, it is a live signature, whether it is a ones and zeros in binary form. So that depends. So the data is already there. Once you are writing something, you're giving it out, so you've given it. So I think that you would really like to use the system. If it is ones and zeros is giving you an advantage, you would like to go after ones and zeros. And that leaves us the question of, protections in the system, because because somebody owns the pipe, somebody owns input and output, and you have to decide whether you want to go through that pipe or not. If you go to Lahore using motorway, people know that you are on the motorway. You are on the motorway from X time to X time on certain date. Every payment that you make internationally goes through a system. It's ones and zeros again. So banking is online. So I think as I said, the technology moves in one direction. So it is up to the people, who own the technology infrastructure also because it's in their best interest to have people signing up to the platform. So if they have no trust in the platform, people will not sign up to the platform. So I think there is a level of communication, which is your trade also, that you are in this communication business. Communication is the key. How you communicate and how you are protecting my data is very important. And you have to keep it secure. So that goes back to the question on and the topic of trust. If you can create it, people will happily use it.
Where do you see कि PSW जो है क्या ऐसा पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी में डेंट डाल सकता है जो शायद और किसी इदारे ने अभी तक नहीं डाला हो?
I think going to talk about dents, I think is probably slightly far out, I would say, because it's an initiative. If we talk about a dent within the system, within the revenue collection system, there is an impact that you make there, which is very quantified sometimes. The number of traders facilitated, number of transactions, number of GDs processed, for example. I think they've processed, thousands of GDs, 90,000 odd traders, signed on, 1,000 regulations, incorporated. So there is data that supports that, and I think you can quantify this in terms of revenue kitna, for example, uska impact kya hai. And I think that would be a good number to have. Okay. For example, if PSW wasn't there, so what is the value add, that PSW has created? For example, X amount of revenue would have come in minus PSW. So there is but the discussion can, of course, not be complete without the facilitation angle, because there is a compliance burden that every taxpayer faces in this country, which is intangible. The pressure that you face, if you have a notice, for example, then you have to go wait, respond, get a lawyer. So there is a compliance burden which takes up cost and time on the part of taxpayer. So I think there is maybe merit in quantifying that also. But in the longer run, I trust and believe that there is going to be a huge metric impact in terms of revenue also. On a broader ecosystem, which you said, uska kya asar ho sakta hai? So there is when you're doing something new, as I said, it's not easy. So if you're setting up a proof of concept, as this organization has done, this is probably a good case study of a digital organization operating with, for example, 250 odd employees, using all means digital. I think it's a good case study in how you structure the organization, how you implement and conceive such a project, how you engage with the broader ecosystem. So it's a good case study. I think there is which I think other organizations which are looking to digitally transform can leverage that experience.
और ADB के साथ किस तरह की collaboration है PSW की?
We are working with them on discussions, for example, on the next level of developments. For example, data centers, as you know, is an important area. So we are looking at, how, for example, data can be shared, how, for example, PSW can be a good example in terms of, running data centers. Having a piece of equipment or an infrastructure is one thing. Making it sustainably functional is another. So if they are able to, share that example and experience with other organizations, we are also we are in discussions with them on setting up high-class data centers, within FBR and PSW. So I think that's going to be an important next level development.
एक और चीज़ हमें I think probably बचपन से सुनने में आ रही है कि जी ट्रेड जो है that could be one thing through the गवादर के पाकिस्तान सेंट्रल एशिया के साथ जोड़ सकता है और पूरी दुनिया जो है वो यहाँ से सारा करेगा and everything. उसका अगर हम थोड़ा सा practically speaking and connecting with the Pakistan single window, do you feel like there is an opportunity and we can scale this up?
Absolutely. Anything technology, anything digital, you can only imagine this scale. But it's again, when you are talking about, connecting internationally, you are connecting with a different ecosystem. So there is a transaction that has to happen at a very policy international level, where, the two ecosystems and two regulatory legal systems are brought into a position of trust. So once you have that trust ongoing, then I think things become easy because you have to align those regulatory instruments on both sides, how systems talk to systems. And it could well be that people on the other side have invested into an entirely different system and the cost of integration for them is very high. Or maybe you have to change some things in order to connect. It's like railway lines, you see.
Yeah.
So you may have a different gauge on the other side. So what will you do? So within Pakistan, for example, if you are trying to, develop something, the corridor from Karachi to Peshawar, it's different. But if you want to connect to Tajikistan or Uzbekistan, it's a different gauge. Or it could be a different gauge. I'm not an expert on this, but it could be. So I think there is a level of, it's like, shifting maybe goods from one truck to another at the border. So it can't be. So the seamlessness at the point of transaction is very important. So I think that's again is a cost benefit analysis, how people see this. But as you said, it's a huge opportunity because, the region's economy is about, $1 trillion or something, 600-700 Central Asian countries, about 400 Pakistan, a little under 400. So there is, advantages shared are synergies. So synergies lead to efficiencies in the system and value creation. Value creation can be intangible, can be in dollars. So there is a value that can be generated for sure. So technology, wherever is scaled, leads to public value, more or less, wherever you're trying to do it, if you're trying to deliver a service, that happens.
Lastly, मुझे बताएं कि अगर एक let's say business ये देख रहा है, so why should businesses working more closely with PSW? Because अभी भी शायद जो ज़रा थोड़े से typical बड़े businesses हैं जो सेठिया companies जिनको आप कह लें, they might still like avoid little bit कि यार ये बस पता नहीं नया क्या शुरू हो गया है, ये शायद कर भी रहे हो तो they are not like actively working. So what would be your message to them and why is it important for Pakistan?
Well, I'm not a trader. I've not used the system, but I have complete trust that they have created something which is useful, which of course the numbers are very good. So I think there can always be people who have not experienced the system. So unless, they have tried it, there is no objective basis for actually saying yes or no. But one can always understand that there is a level of uncertainty and doubt that people would have because they're used to doing things in a certain way. And that is comfortable for them. I would do that because unless I tried the city app in Islamabad, I would not know. But it was a jiffy, because you do it and you're done in 5 minutes. So once you start using it, then you will know. So there is value that you will only know once you start it. So again, goes back to one, communication. Number two, how they perceive the system to be trustworthy, and how you help them to sign on because it's a service. It's not like people are pulling you in to pay taxes, for example. And then it's a service, that you are giving them, and it's once I'm convinced that it works to my advantage, I will not use it, or I will use it based on that experience. Secondly, there is also an element of transparency that comes with it, because once you are in the system, you're in the system. So there is a trajectory that builds in terms of data, which is useful in a way, because then that the organization, the public sector can use it to create more value for you and grow the ecosystem. So unless things remain siloed, the system doesn't grow.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. It's lovely talking to you.
It's a pleasure, and I really enjoyed talking to you today. And it's a privilege to be on your show and enjoy the ambience in your good office.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.